Ever try to plan like a vacation? Or renovate your kitchen, or even just bake a cake from scratch. You might not realize it, but you were knee-deep in project management.
That's right.
Today, we're diving into this fascinating guide that you gave us on project elaboration.
Yes.
And get this, it's in both Spanish and Basque.
It is remarkable how these core principles really do transcend language barriers.
Yeah.
It's like we're distilling a universal recipe for project success, no matter what language you speak.
Okay, so let's unpack this universal recipe then.
Yeah.
What is it about projects that makes them so universal?
Well, at their core, projects are all about change.
Okay.
They're about moving from a current state to a desired one. You're not just baking a cake, you're transforming raw ingredients into something delicious.
Right.
Projects at work, home, or anywhere follow that same principle of transformation.
So the big takeaway here is a project without a clear why, without that desired state in mind,
Right.
is just busy work.
Exactly. And that's where good project design comes in,
Okay.
which your document emphasizes really heavily.
Yeah.
Before even thinking about tasks, you need to identify the real problem or need you're trying to address.
So before I even gather my cake ingredients, I need to ask, am I even hungry? And do I even like cake?
Precisely.
Okay.
That's step one in a really solid project design.
Now, this design phase seems less exciting than actually doing the project.
Yeah.
Why bother with careful design when we're so eager to jump into action?
That's a common misconception.
Yeah.
Think of architects.
Yeah.
They don't just start piling bricks to build a skyscraper. They create detailed blueprints, first ensuring a solid foundation. It's the same with projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the design phase is like laying the groundwork for project success.
It is.
Making sure we're building on solid ground and not like quicksand.
Yes.
Tell me more about how this document breaks down that design phase.
So the source outlines a really clear structure.
Okay.
First, you need to deeply understand the needs and problems you're addressing. It even mentions interesting techniques, like the Delphi technique.
Okay.
Imagine trying to predict the future of, say, self-driving cars.
Okay.
The Delphi technique would gather experts not in the same room,
Right.
but through rounds of anonymous feedback so no one dominates the conversation.
That's a really clever way to get diverse and unbiased insights.
It is.
So understanding the problem is step one. What comes next?
Prioritization.
Okay.
The document stresses that resources, time, money, energy are always limited.
Right.
Choosing what matters most becomes crucial in the design phase.
Makes sense. You can't do everything. So focus on what truly makes a difference.
Right.
What's the final element of project design?
Viability.
Okay.
Can we actually pull this off both technically and financially? The document really hammers home this point.
Yeah.
And for good reason.
Okay.
Many projects fail because they weren't truly viable from the start.
It's like checking if I have enough eggs before I start mixing that cake batter.
Yes.
You don't want to get halfway through and realize you're missing a key ingredient.
Exactly. Good design is about making sure your project is doable
Okay.
and setting yourself up for success from the very beginning.
Speaking of setting ourselves up for success, that brings us to the next critical phase, planning.
Yes.
And this is where things start to get really tangible. This is where that famous Gantt chart comes into play.
Absolutely. Now that we have a solid design, it's time to map out the journey.
Okay.
And the Gantt chart is our trusty roadmap.
Okay, I'll admit the first time I heard Gantt chart, I pictured like a complicated spreadsheet that only engineers could decipher.
Right.
But you're making it sound more like a visual guide, something that everyone can use.
Exactly. A Gantt chart helps you visualize that entire project timeline at a glance.
Okay.
Instead of a jumble of tasks, imagine seeing what needs to happen when all laid out clearly.
I'm starting to see the appeal, but what exactly makes up this roadmap? What goes into a Gantt chart?
Yeah, so your document breaks it down into 4 key components.
Right.
First, you have your activities, the individual tasks that need to be done to complete the project.
Okay.
Like in our cake baking scenario, gathering ingredients, mixing, baking, frosting, each step is an activity.
Right, so we're breaking down that big, overwhelming project into smaller, more manageable bites.
Exactly.
What's
Like
next?
each of those bites, each activity has a duration,
Okay.
which is your best estimate of how long each task will take. This is where things can get tricky if you underestimate, so be realistic.
Right.
And then comes dependencies,
Okay.
where the visual aspect of the Gantt chart really shines.
Dependencies. Okay, here's where I imagine things could get messy without a good plan.
Absolutely.
Tell me more.
This is where you map out which tasks must be completed before others can begin.
Right.
You can't frost the cake before baking it right. The Gantt chart helps you visualize those relationships,
Okay.
preventing any cart before the horse mishaps.
It's like assembling a puzzle.
Yes,
You have to put the pieces in the right order for the final picture to make sense.
a perfect analogy.
Okay.
And finally, we have milestones,
Okay.
key points in your timeline, marking significant progress.
Okay.
Think of them as checkpoints for celebration and ensuring you're on track.
So it's like, okay, we've successfully baked the cake layers, time to celebrate with a little frosting taste test.
Exactly.
Which also helps, keep our energy up for the remaining tasks.
Yes.
Milestones, love them.
They break down a large project into smaller victories, keeping everyone motivated and engaged.
Okay, I'm sold on Gantt charts now. It's like having that visual guide to stay organized, spot potential bottlenecks, celebrate those wins along the way.
Yes.
But let's be real, not everything goes according to plan, even with the best timelines and charts.
That's true.
Life loves to throw curveballs.
Absolutely. Which is why risk management is so crucial.
Okay.
And thankfully, it's a key part of your document.
Okay, risk management, this sounds a bit more serious than Gantt charts and frosting taste tests.
It is, but just as important. Think back to our vacation planning example.
Okay.
You might create a beautiful itinerary, but what happens if your flight gets delayed or there's unexpected bad weather?
Yeah, my perfectly planned trip suddenly becomes a lot less perfect.
Right.
Trust me, I've been there.
Happens to all of us.
Hey!
So how can we prepare for the unexpected?
Because SAG.
That's where risk management comes in.
Okay.
Your document outlines a clear process for identifying potential risks, assessing their likelihood and impact, and developing strategies to mitigate those risks.
So it's like packing an umbrella just in case. Even if the forecast looks sunny, you're not being pessimistic, you're just being prepared.
Exactly. And it's not just about technical problems.
Right.
You have to consider LL factors that could impact your project.
Yeah.
Funding issues, team changes, even something as unpredictable as the weather.
Right. In our cake baking scenario, risk management would be having a backup bag of flour on hand, just in case I spill the first one all over the floor, hypothetically speaking, of course.
Now, the document makes an essential distinction
Okay.
between the probability of a risk occurring and its potential impact.
So not all risks are created equal. Some are more likely to happen than others, and some would be more disastrous if they did.
Right.
How do we differentiate?
So some risks might be highly unlikely,
Okay.
but catastrophic if they occur.
Yeah.
Imagine a key team member suddenly has to drop out of your project.
Right.
On the other hand, other risks are more like minor annoyances.
Okay.
Maybe a supplier is running a bit behind schedule.
Mm-hmm.
The key is figuring out which ones to prioritize
Okay.
and focus your mitigation efforts on.
That makes sense. So how do you actually do that? How do you decide which risks to focus on first?
This is where the source document gets really insightful.
Okay.
It talks about analyzing risks based on their probability and impact, creating a sort of risk matrix to visualize these factors.
Okay, so we've identified the big scary risks, the ones we really need to keep an eye on.
Yes.
What do we actually do about them? What action can we take?
So the document highlights two main approaches,
Okay.
preventive action and corrective action.
Okay, so preventative is about preventing the risk from happening in the first place.
Exactly.
And corrective is about having a plan if it does happen.
Exactly.
What would those look like in practice?
So preventive action is all about stopping a problem before it happens.
Okay.
Like in your flour spilling scenario, maybe you use a bigger bowl
Oh.
or place a mat underneath to catch any spills.
Right.
Corrective action, on the other hand, is your plan B.
Okay.
It's what you do if the problem occurs.
Right.
Like having that backup bag of flour ready to go.
Right. Or, knowing how to quickly clean up a floury mess without ruining your entire kitchen.
Right? You're not being negative or expecting the worst. It's about being prepared and having options.
It's all about having a plan B.
Yes.
Or sometimes even a plan C. You know what else I found really interesting about this document?
What's that?
It wasn't just about timelines, charts, and risk matrices.
Right.
It really emphasized the human element of projects.
You're right. Even with the best tools and processes, projects ultimately succeed or fail because of the people involved.
Yeah.
That human element can be the most unpredictable,
Right.
but also the most rewarding aspect of any project.
It's amazing how often we forget that projects are about people.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the Gantt charts and the deadlines and all of that, but ultimately it's the human element that can really make or break a project.
Absolutely. And this document, thankfully, does not shy away from that. It dives into these essential leadership skills that are needed to navigate those people-related challenges.
Okay.
It's not enough to just assemble a team.
Right.
You need to lead them effectively.
So we've got our timelines, we've got our risk management strategies, we've gathered our amazing team.
Yes.
What leadership skills are we talking about here to make sure that this project is a success?
Well, the document focuses on 3 key areas.
Okay.
Communication, negotiation, and problem solving.
Okay.
And it all starts with communication.
Okay.
Clear, consistent communication is absolutely essential for keeping everyone on the same page.
Right.
Think of it as the grease that keeps your project running smoothly.
Which, let's be honest, is easier said than done. Especially when you've got a team full of different personalities and communication styles and probably even different communication preferences.
Exactly. And that's where being an effective communicator as a leader is so important.
Yeah.
It's not just about talking, it's about actively listening.
Right.
And making sure that everyone feels heard and understood.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about negotiation?
Yeah.
I usually associate that with, like high stakes business deals.
Yeah.
Not necessarily everyday project management.
Yeah, negotiation doesn't have to be so formal.
Okay.
In a project context, it's really about finding common ground. Just
Okay.
like you said, with communication.
Yeah.
It's about making sure that everyone's needs and perspectives are considered.
So if one team member wants to use chocolate frosting and another one wants vanilla, a good project leader helps them find that compromise, that perfect swirl of chocolate and vanilla that satisfies everyone.
Exactly. It's about finding solutions that work for the project and the people.
Okay.
And then finally, we have problem solving.
Right.
As we discussed in risk management, things rarely go exactly as planned.
That's putting it mildly. There are always surprises along the way.
And a good project leader needs to be able to face those surprises head on. They need to be able to identify problems,
Yeah.
analyze their root causes,
Okay.
and most importantly, develop effective solutions.
It sounds like problem solving is a skill that goes way beyond project management.
It does.
It's valuable in pretty much every aspect of life.
Absolutely. Being able to approach challenges with a clear head
Yeah.
and a solutions-oriented mindset is invaluable no matter what you're working on.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We talked about the why behind projects, the importance of good design and planning,
Right.
how to navigate those inevitable risks, and that often overlooked human element.
Yes.
It's like we've baked a whole project management cake together.
I like it.
And hopefully our listener is feeling well-equipped to go forth and create their own project masterpieces.
I hope so.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with something to ponder.
Okay.
This document, tucked away amidst all the technical details, offered this really thought-provoking piece of advice.
Okay.
It said, if you were starting a project tomorrow, what one thing from this deep dive would you focus on first and why?
Ooh, that is a good one.
What would it be? Would it be clarifying that why behind the project, that desired outcome we talked about?
It's so important.
Or ensuring its viability from the start, making sure you have what it takes to succeed? Maybe you're ready to master the art of the Gantt chart.
Right.
The possibilities are endless. Whatever your answer, we hope this deep dive has given you the knowledge and the inspiration to tackle any project with confidence.
Yes.
Remember, it's not just about getting things done, it's about making a difference one project at a time.
Well said.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder your next project masterpiece.